Marv will always give me that bomb. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Hold up.
Hello, and welcome to Shady Talk Wednesday. I am your lovely host, Miss No Shade But Shade. I am here today on this lovely Wednesday. Hope everyone out there is feeling good, catching some of that sun, so you're not in the shade. Anyway, I would like to welcome my special guest that I have here in the building with me today. And he goes by the name of TrueSpeaksPower.
That's right.
Let's give it up for True.
Yeah, peace. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. Also, let's keep in mind I do have my assistant, DJ Keys, in the building who will be keeping up with all the comments, the YouTube comments, the Facebook comments, the Instagram comments. So feel free to ask any questions, chime in with us. We are here to answer any questions, talk about anything you wanted to talk about, whatever it is that you want to talk about or ask while we have True in the building. Well, welcome, True.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on Shady Talk Wednesday. I've been trying to get you to come on the show. I know we have conversed prior to the show, and I know you were saying that when you come, you wanted to be ready. So I am happy that you are ready. You told me that you was coming out with a book, and we are proud to announce the book is here. Yes. The power of choice. You are not stuck.
And I also told you that you'll be the first. I gave you my word. I said, sis, when the book is done, you will be the first.
Right.
And you are the first.
And I appreciate that so much. Yeah. I am honored that I was able to have you in studio with me for the first time. So I appreciate the love of you coming and sharing your testimony, your story, your trials, your tribulations, the things you've been through. I've read through the book. It's deep, True. It's deep, and I'm loving it. I'm loving the fact that you are a male entrepreneur. Indeed. Or a male. A lot of things about you. Just an author in his own book, and it's just great to see when you have men putting this kind of work out. You know, because we always hear about female writers. Not that there's not any male writers or authors out there, but to actually be able to interview one, because I did do an interview with a female, so to interview an author that's a male, it's just amazing to me. So let's talk a little bit about you, and let's talk a little bit about the book. But before we get into the book, I want you to introduce yourself.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about you.
So my name is True Kepra. I'm from Paterson, New Jersey.
Okay.
Pardon me. I am an NLP practitioner.
Okay.
NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming.
Okay.
Which, to simplify that, it just basically means how the mind and body work together to perform. I'm an empowerment coach.
Oh, nice.
Author, official now.
Nice.
I have 5 children.
Nice.
Let's see, what else can I say about myself? I'm just a man all about empowering men.
Right.
So empowering people in general, my sisters too.
Right.
But I think that there's a plague in our community.
Right.
You know, and being a man, I think that it's more authentic that I speak to men about being masculine in a positive way.
Right.
Not that I'm an expert.
Right.
Not that I'm a master.
Right.
You know, definitely the journey of personal development, I think, is something that's ongoing. And especially when you move through different stages of life.
Right.
Like, for example, I'm a grandfather now.
Okay.
You know, so that's a certain stage, right? Becoming a husband was a stage.
Right.
And, oh, man, there's a lot of work there that I need. But I think that it's important for men to know that there's other men suffering. There's other men going through trials and tribulations and challenges, and that we can pull through. Right. And I personally feel that one of the reasons why I could stand here before you is because of the positive men in my life. So I think that it's only right that I pay it forward. Right. And just through whatever talents and gifts that I have.
And I appreciate that. And I pray that we do have some gentlemen tuned in into the show. I'm hoping my son is tuned into the show, because I definitely sent him the link because I knew you was coming here with some positivity. And it's so crazy that I was getting a little tongue-tied at the beginning, because I'm so used to sometimes interviewing artists, you know, instead of authors. So sometimes like, oh, the artist is like, you know, it kind of sounds the same. And like I said, for you to be a male and to come on and just be able to give you recognition of being an author is just amazing once again. And I just love how you just talked about the positivity that you want to give out and the encouragement to men, because I do feel like we need it. You know, us women, we always get together, we throw events that we put together to try to lift one another up. And we don't hear a lot about a lot of brotherhoods, you know, like getting events together. I don't know. Well, I don't know, but it just seemed that it is a little tough, I guess, getting men to come together and having brothers like you speak to them. And the reason why I'm happy you here, because throughout your book, what I like is that a lot of things in the book, I feel like some of the men, rather they're young, whatever age, just out there, they will be able to relate to what you've been through, to be in this position, in this place that you're in now, and you know, different things that's going on, like you said, from manhood to granddaddy to husband, you know, just having those different layers in life that you have now, you know, entered. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was the beginning of your book, when you talked about dedication. So I wrote me some little notes, because I was just so amazed by some of the things that you talked about. And one of them that I read was when you wrote something about growing up from the bottom. And the reason why that was touchy to me, because I just feel like it's a lot of us that grew up from the bottom. And when I say the bottom, it just means to me, just coming from that place where you just didn't have things handed to, where I read further in your book how you just had to, you know, go out there and learn the way, basically, from just learning the way with growing up. And me as a female, I can experience, you know, I have some experience with some of that. And I'm quite sure there's a lot of people, you know, just in our age era, or just coming from where we come from, just having those experiences. But the greatest thing that I like about today is, once again, you as a man, you're able to talk about that. So let's talk about that. What did you mean when you talked about growing up from the bottom?
Indeed. And I appreciate you mentioning the relatedness aspect of the book. And that's important to say, because some of the stories, and the book is not an autobiography, right? So you hear aspects of my story, but it's not my full story. There was a time when I was ashamed of some of the things that I did and some of the things that I've been through. However, I purposely chose and strategically chose to speak the truth and be authentic and vulnerable, because, you know, whenever you write your story, you open up to a lot of things, critique about just the writing in general, right? And also, like, I was concerned, let's say, you know, because I still have a job, right? I'm an entrepreneur, but I do work. So I was, you know, thinking like, wow, okay, if my supervisor reads the book and finds out some of the things that I've done in my past, what's going to happen? You know, and it's, you know, I have a record, you know, so there's a lot of issues with that. But I said, you know what? I feel like, I'm not a religious person, but I feel like there's a purpose why I survived what I've been through. I mean, there's so many instances where things could have really been worse for me. So I feel like I owe it to not only the community, but just the universe, whatever you want to call it. I owe that to be real. And the other thing too, a lot of people who are familiar with my transformation and know about my story personally, you know, and specifically women, by the way, they tend to reach out and ask me questions, especially when they have sons, or even when they have little nephews, or sometimes husbands, and ask me questions about how did I accomplish what I accomplished? How was I able to transform myself and whatnot? So just wanted to say that the relatedness, I'm glad that you caught that, because it's one of the things that I'm very purposeful about my words.
Okay.
So let me think.
Okay.
The word that's coming up without overthinking it is afraid, right? But I want to make sure that that's the word that I want to use. Yeah, I was afraid.
Okay.
I'll sit with that. So thank you for that.
Okay.
Affirming that. So what I meant from about coming from the bottom.
Right.
I meant growing up with a single parent in a single parent household. You know, I always say poor is relative.
Right.
You know, I'm Dominican, right? That's my nationality. I was born here in New York, right? But raised in Patterson.
Okay.
But my nationality is Dominican.
Right.
So when you go to Dominican Republic and you see the hoods there, that's a whole different level of poor, right? However, from my experience, in comparison to my reality, right, I grew up poor.
Okay.
So what I mean by poor is, financial. My mother, I love my mother. She did the best. She worked at a factory, Marcal, right in Elmwood. It burnt down. I heard they built it back up, whatever. So that's what I meant. I meant growing up, with lack of resources. Also growing up in an environment where, it was do or die.
Right.
You had to really grow up fast. You had to grow up to be tough.
Right.
And you had to grow up to also be sharp at a very young age. Like I remember, so I always carry a knife on me. I got my knife on me right now. I remember it had to be, so I moved to California at 7th grade. So that's what, 12 years old? Right? 11, 12 years old, right? Something like that. So I remember walking down Grand Street. So it was definitely before I was 12. So let's play it safe. Let's say I was 10.
Okay.
And I had a kitchen knife in my pocket already. You understand what I'm saying? And I remember reflecting on that because I have children.
Right.
And my children are older now, and I also have 2 little ones. But looking at them when they were 10, 11 years old, I was like, man, I look at them, right? And I'm like, I was already carrying knives at that age. I remember walking down Grand Street. I remember the specific memory that I have in my mind. And this one man, he looked a little off. Now that I reflect, he might have been, a drug addict or something like that. And I remember thinking, if my man get too close, I'm stabbing him. And let's be clear, I'm not saying that to sit here and sound tough.
Right.
I've never promoted that. I'm a man first and foremost.
Right.
And I stand behind that.
Okay.
But I ain't about that.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? I'm telling you the reality of the situation that a 10-year-old is already thinking about possibly stabbing somebody.
Right.
This is my life.
Right.
This is real. And so that's what I mean about coming from the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? I come from a place where the education is trash. Drugs. Already, I remember growing up, I used to live on Mill Street. I'm from 10th Ave and 23rd. That's what I represent. But before that, I lived on Mill Street. I remember, I used to hang out in projects, Grand Street projects, because it was around the corner.
Okay.
One of my best friends, his name is Henry. He got stabbed already. We was children. I told you that I got sent to California because I was already getting in trouble. Cops were already looking for me. So just to... I was 12 when I got sent to Cali. So this was all prior to 12 years old. Cops already looking for my crew. Back then we used to call it posse.
Oh yeah, posse.
I'm dating myself right now.
Did you have a God name?
A God name?
Yeah,
I joined the Nation of Gods and Earths in 1996.
Okay, but did you? Well, back when we talked about people having posses, they had like names, like
you mean like a street name?
Yeah,
back
like
then.
a street name. They called it God names.
Oh, okay. Let me see. What was my name back then? I think it was something crazy like Zone.
Okay.
And my best friend was Twilight. Something crazy like that.
Okay.
Children's stuff. But so that's what I mean about the bottom.
Right.
But and let me say this too. The interesting is, amongst all that negativity,
right,
it was also beautiful. There was also beautiful times.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to still remember the times when the block would look out for you, like the families.
Yeah.
Like I can go in any given house and get a meal.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to have the two polar opposites,
Yeah.
You got the griminess,
yeah,
but then you also have the love.
And it's crazy because, like you said, even at the age of 10, you started carrying knives. Now, when you said you started carrying knives, was it just because were you ever experienced with something that you was in fear of, or just feeling like living like in a project setting, you kind of knew about the drug life, or what made you at 10 already feel so fearful to want to carry a knife back then?
So I didn't live in the projects. I used to be in the projects, right?
Okay.
Back then I was living on Mill Street, but
Okay.
it was already violent.
Okay.
Like I already seen like adults fighting. You know, back then, one thing that I do experience about back then, that it was more hands.
Yeah.
You know, when I mean by hands, I mean using your fist.
Yeah.
And there was also code. Like I remember another memory with two dudes was fighting literally on Mill Street. And one of them said, man, you lucky there's children around. And I was one of the children that was around. And so they like, you know, they threw a few blows at each other and then they stopped. And one of them said that, and then they like parted ways, probably, you know, to catch up a little later. So just really growing up in that era, and also too, like growing up already fighting as young, and also being bullied. You know, a lot of men don't maybe not want to admit that.
Yeah.
But by the term, you know, the definition of what a bully is, I've experienced that as well.
Okay.
You know, like older, like I remember, you know, things like, yo, give me a hat. You know, things like that. And you're looking at him, dude like 16, right? Older than you, or his crew's bigger, or they have more people. So yeah, man, it's just like, you know, being introduced to violence and just that type of stuff. You learn quick, you know? And so you learn, like, you know, so you're going through things where people bigger than you are striving to impose their will on you. So you're like, yo, I gotta even things out. Stick, bat, rocks, chain, knife, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. And feel free, Keem, if you want to, you know, chime in and, you know, ask questions. I know you are girl to do all the technical work for us.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll definitely have some questions for True.
Okay. Yeah, let's go.
I would like to say True is, I think I met True, I don't know, it's been more than 3 years ago.
I was about to say, I didn't want to cut you. I was at least 5.
At least 5,
right?
Okay.
3 to 5.
3 to 5 years.
Yeah. At this age, time is like a blur, right?
And I met him through this group I'm a part of, 85 Music. He's good friends with quite a few of 85 Music.
Indeed.
And he's always been positive, very uplifting. And to see a male from the hood, from Patterson, present himself the way he does, I liked it.
Thank you.
I thought that was just, it was just a good look. And I always appreciate his positivity. I try to spin off of it. And
I appreciate that.
Every time I bump into him, he always has some, even on his pages, it's just positive information. So
yeah, definitely. And, you know, I want to say, because I get that a lot, and I don't want to like go over what you said, but I want to be real. I am not always positive. You know, I definitely have my moments. You know, like even like today, my wife and I have been through something and I lost my cool. And I'm disappointed in myself for that. However, I intentionally promote positivity and strive to, as much as possible, manifest that in my life. But I just want to be real, because again, right, I want men to know that, listen, I'm you.
Yeah.
You know, you might be experiencing a lot of negativity in your life, but just like the book said, right, the power of choice, choose positivity.
Yeah.
You know, acknowledge what's going on, what you said, what you did, and just say, okay, all right, we're going to switch things around. So being positive, to your point, you know, it's a choice.
Right.
It's a choice.
I agree.
But you know what?
I struggle with too.
I'm glad you said that, because I think sometimes people do, when I say, oh, you're a positive person, that you show up as this perfect positive person. And I think there's a gray area there. Nobody is perfect. Nobody wakes up positive every day. But it's good to see that you fight for the positive to outweigh the negative.
And that's key, DJ Keys. That is the key.
Yeah, the fight.
Exactly. Like people say, like, yo, like a lot of people who know me in my real life, you know, everyday life, they're like, True, so disciplined. And I appreciate that. But the thing, what I tell them is, bro, I struggle just like you.
Yeah.
It's just that I choose.
Right.
You know, there's times I go to the gym. That's a simple example we could use, right? I'm in the car like, Man, I don't want to go in there, man. I just want to go home. Just like everybody else. But then I say, no, we going in because today was a workout day and I push myself. So that's the thing that I really want men, especially young men, to know.
Right.
Push yourself,
Push
bruh.
yourself, yeah. And it has to start with mentally in order for the young men to push themselves. Because in order for them to push themselves even physically, they got to kind of connect mentally, where I feel like it's a lot of things going on out here that they're very, distracted about. And to another subject I wanted to talk about in your dedication part of your book, where you wrote, thinking hardship is the norm, turning nothing into something. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a lack of resources, right? And then there's also a lack of being resourceful.
Okay.
So we can all tap into the resources that we currently have.
Right.
And do the best with that.
Right.
And the reason why that's important, and I mentioned that, is because a lot of people use that as an excuse to why they are not where they want to be, or why they don't do what they want to do, or what have you. But it's like, work with what you have.
Yeah.
Work with what you have.
Right.
You can't go to the gym. You don't have time. Do you have time for 50 push-ups?
Right.
You know what I mean? You don't have time to read. Okay,
Right.
can you watch a video?
Right.
Okay, you don't have time to go to school. All right, can you read a book? You don't have the money. So there's free books in a lot. I just, I don't think that there's a lack. So there's an issue with resources, no doubt.
Right.
But I think that most people make it bigger than what it really is. What I think the issue is there's a lack of being resourceful.
Right. Right. And you know what? I'm glad you talked about resource, because that's my next chapter I wanted to get to talk to you about your resources.
Let's make it happen.
So, okay. So when you mentioned about resources, you also talked about what happened to our city. And when did you discover something happened in our city? So I see when you did speak about resources, you talked a little bit about that. So I want you to explain those two questions. What happened in our city that you think, and when did you discover something happened in our city?
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, that specific part, so there's two things I'm thinking of. There's a conversation I had with my old professor, Parsha Hobson, who is from Patterson. She teaches at PCC. I got my associate's degree from PCC.
Okay.
And so we were having a conversation about the community.
Yeah, I read that.
And I asked her, so because if you, I'm a big student of history. I love history. Love history. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that history is best qualified to reward all research, not to get caught up in the past, but it lets you know what's going on in the present and what not to repeat and how to move forward. Right. So I was asking Professor Parsha Hobson, like, what happened? She's obviously older than me.
Right.
So she remembers some of the past. And so she mentioned some of the things, crack cocaine.
Yeah.
She mentioned that a lot of the successful people, and let me say this, successful that's all relative also, right?
Right.
But I think what she, I can't put words in her mouth, but I think what she also meant is professionals, left. Like at one point in time, this is what she was saying, your neighbor might be a dentist. Your neighbor might be a lawyer, a doctor.
Yeah.
So when a lot of those professionals, quote unquote, successful people left, right, the city was left with a lot of the crime and drugs. And not to say, look, Patterson's a beautiful place.
It
and
is.
there's a lot of amazing people in Patterson
I agree.
striving, doing their thing.
I agree.
Right. So we're not making it seem like Patterson's all bad either.
Right.
Let's not put that out there.
Right.
But it's just really like, man, what happened?
Yeah, I agree.
And so just talking about, the things that happened and a lot of, crack cocaine did a number in the community. Yeah. So, and I think that needs to be mentioned more. And not for the sake of dwelling on the past. There was a time that I was the type of person that dwelled on the past and used the past a lot as an excuse.
Right.
But it does need to be acknowledged.
It does.
Because we are not starting from the same
right
place
now.
other communities are starting from.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like we got hit bad.
Right.
So that's what I meant by that. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, and even with speaking on resources, me and Keys was talking about that recently when we was basically saying, like, even in the school system, in some of the jobs that people work, a lot of people are retired. So we don't have those people no more, like those older teachers. Nothing against the younger teachers, but we just don't have those older teachers. We don't have like those doctors that come from back in the day that, give you the real remedies. We don't have those grandmothers like that no more that you can expect a Sunday dinner. We don't have those neighbors no more that look out for each other, because now the neighbors are afraid to help kids because they don't know what they have going on because of the weapons that's represented out now. So everything, like what you said about resources, it's like a lot of it is gone. It's gone. We don't have that anymore. And how can we get that back? I don't know, but the resources, they are gone.
And, I'm not to cut you. I'm glad you're speaking about resources in that way, because it's not money. Resources is not just money.
Right.
Those are resources.
Right.
Like, the older generation. So why are we highlighting the older generations? They have experience.
Yeah, the experience.
We're talking about the wisdom that they can pass on.
The wisdom, the experience.
And I definitely agree with you. I've seen that there seems to be a decline in the art of mentorship.
Yeah.
And that's a rabbit hole, right? What I will say briefly is that I think one of the issue is that a lot of the older brothers and sisters, even people of my age, I'm in my mid 40s, 44 to be exact, are trying to be young.
Yeah.
They want to be so much like the youth.
Yeah.
So why should the youth respect you? You talking like them, you're dressing like them, you're acting like them, you're hanging like them.
Yeah.
And I mean, and there's no difference. See, when I'm in a building and I'm with a teenager or a man in his 20s or in his 30s, he knows, like, we could rock, we can have a conversation, maybe talk a little bit about hip hop. Well, my man, I'm older than you. I'm on a different level. And I don't mean that like no elitist stuff. But like, we're on a different level.
And I get that, because even learning now with just, people who you associate with or, hang around or been friends with, it's sad that we now have to put people in certain categories where they're not catching up to the times of conversations where we are at our ages, at adults, that we feel like we should be tuned into talking about.
Yeah, a lot of people my age are and I hope I don't sound judgmental, but I'm speaking the real. Are doing stuff we were doing in our 20s. Yeah, and like you said, the conversation hasn't changed.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I love to joke and stuff like that too. However, like, there should be some type of evolution.
Yeah, and especially to see what's going on, and we are the older generation, and somewhat we should be able to sit around and have regular, normal adult conversations.
Indeed.
Like, just our futures, what we're doing in our futures, things we own,
careers,
things we have,
projects.
careers we're trying to get. It's like those conversations even went down the drain now. Those are not even, topics no more, even just talking to people just in general. Nobody is talking about the things that's important. Nobody is talking about things that's right in front of them that they see others doing. It's like it's skipped. And that's where I feel like we as adults, sad to say, our peers, we had to learn we're now separated from them because of those things where we're just not connecting. But another thing that I read about the resources, I also read where you talked about growing up without a father and uncles and just having those type of inspirational men in your life.
Positive role models.
Yeah, positive role models. Let's talk about that. So, let's talk about what did you mean by, I know what you mean by not having them, but where did it affect you?
Where it affected me is, so there's a lot of lessons about masculinity that I had to learn on my own.
Right.
Now, just imagine the mistakes I've done. Whenever you do something on your own, you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, being a man, growing up the way I did, where I'm from, some of those mistakes came with a major impact, right? And so what I meant by that is just that just having to learn those lessons, and by word of mouth, which you just mentioned, but also the example, which is probably the most important. Just leading by example, by just seeing. You know, I forgot how the saying goes about children, but something about children don't do as you say, they do as you do. Something to that vein, right? And so just, it's important for just masculinity. Now, we're not just talking about words and theories. We're talking about physical examples.
Yeah.
You know, walk, talk, behavior, the mannerisms. Like today I mentioned how, you know, I lost my cool, right? With my wife, and I'm, you know, and I apologize to her and everything. However, my son wasn't there.
Right.
But if my son saw me lose my cool, and I didn't acknowledge that I lost my cool and apologize, then he would think that that behavior is okay.
Right.
So now think about what a lot of young men, the youth specifically, are seeing in the community, thinking that that's how a man should act and talk.
Right.
And I want to say that the way I'm speaking in front of you now, I wasn't always like this.
Right.
You're talking to a man that's been working on himself for years and still working on yourself.
And we respect it.
Thank you. So I, you know, because I don't want nobody to think like,
no, and it's okay.
Just
Listen,
keeping it real.
One thing I feel like you don't never have to push yourself back into a hole from where you come from. Appreciate when you're representing, and you have that mentality to understand that I can say I've been there and I'm here now.
Indeed.
So, and that's the thing that I feel like sometimes people want us to do when we are trying to change or we have changed. Everybody wants you to stay in that rabbit hole that you were in. But the best part to me about that is when you're able to come out of that and recognize it and be able to speak on it and be okay that this is the change that I'm getting into. I'm still working at it.
Right.
You know, it is a process, but I'm here. You know, even if I'm not 100% here, I'm here.
Indeed.
So to stand in that and to know that, to me, that's the best part of understanding True Speaks Power. So I appreciate that. I don't never want you to feel like you got to go back, you know, or clean it up. You cleaning it up. You cleaned it up. You doing what you doing. You know, you're setting a positive impact out here, and you're not making anybody feel like you don't come from certain experience and things that you have done, and some things you're still may get into as being a human being because you're human. So it's okay to that. And that's the thing that we do need for men and people to be on that positive, or to represent that positive conversation with young men so they do know it's okay. Because I think sometimes people are afraid when they make a mistake, they kind of go into a shell because they don't know the impact of how somebody else is going to make them feel. But I feel like if they have more of you, more of me, more of Keys to say, it's okay. We're human. It happened. And to even start from where we come from. Because even I was looking at this talk show yesterday, and this young guy with his father, he was staying with his father, and I think the young guy was maybe in his 20s, close to 30s, and he had he had an altercation with his father over his father not being home with the key. So him and his father went back and forth with words, and the son wind up macing the father.
Wow.
So the guy, the host of the show, the young man came there to try to see if he can make ends work with the father. But the father was saying no, he didn't want to make it work, which I understood. But the guy, the host from the show, was trying to tell the father, you know, your son been through this, that, and the third, cool. But I say that to say this. I do feel that the father was a little tough saying that he's okay with not having a relationship. But I do understand, as a father and as a son, you have no right to mace me over you having an attitude over something you dislike. And this is what we talking about, where kids just don't, you know, they don't have no type of respect. They feel like doing those things is okay, and because you the parent, you supposed to forgive them. But it's like, no, you mean to tell me, and just like the father said, when I grew up, we grew up with respect, let alone Mason. That's like Mason. You might as well say you might as well physically hit. That's the same thing. Yeah. So to know that we have these children in this generation to feel like, oh, because that's just how I felt and that's just what I was going through and you made me mad. And that's why I like some of the things that you talked about in this book with just reflecting and kind of understanding what has happened before you actually get into that next emotion to do some of the things that may lead you to do, because it's not right. Yeah,
and and if I don't know much details or facts about that story,
right?
But if I was the father's friend,
right,
I would also ask him, like, what is it about you that your son felt it was even okay to do that? Like, I'm not saying he did anything.
Right.
I'm saying that it's important to self-reflect and say, like, is there something that I could have done differently also? Because I believe that the response you get in life should be observed for especially for a man to say, like, okay, why did these people respond like that?
But do you not think that the child, because of the generation that we are living in, sometimes some children can be raised a certain kind of way, but because that's just how they deal with things, their emotions. And I do get where the guy on the show was saying that the kid has been neglected. He has been this, he has been pushed on the side for his mother. So he does have a lot of things that he's, there is some backtrack. But the father was saying that I've never did that to him. I've always tried to, stay open with him and do this and show him some. But I guess just some of those missing pieces. But I still don't agree you take no mace.
I do too, and I don't know how old that boy was. However, we do have to consider those things as part of the equation. I'm gonna tell you something that my mother reminded me of not too long ago when I was on the block doing my thing. So I'm from 10th and 23rd, and I used to hustle on 10th and 23rd.
Okay.
And so my mother came out one day in her rollers and nightgown, looking for me because I was out on the block doing my thing. And she's like looking for me, telling me to come home in front of my friends, and I'm that dude where I'm from, you know what I mean? Shorty's around, all that, embarrassing me. You know what I'm saying? Of course, she trying to save her son.
Right.
And she told me, you threw rocks at me. You know what I mean? And I was like, no, Mom, I did not throw rocks at you. She was like, yeah, you threw rocks. I came out there to get you, and you threw rocks and told me to get the F out and go back. I was like, damn, Mom. I'm so sorry, Mom.
Yeah.
So again, I gotta have compassion for that child.
Right.
I don't know the specifics,
right.
And I'm not saying it's okay, but he is a byproduct of his environment.
Yeah.
Again, no excuses, no passes.
Right.
But I gotta look at the whole picture.
But that's why I said I do feel where he's hurt, where the father is just still like completely shutting him out.
Yeah, and and the little boy's in pain, and unfortunately, he took it out on his pops.
Yeah.
Not right.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We do have a question from one of our YouTube viewers.
Okay.
My good sis Janice. She says, how many siblings do you have, and what stood out to you in your life that made you say it's time for a change?
Great question, Janice. I appreciate the question. So I have 3 siblings, 2 on my father's side and 1 on my mother's side. So that's that. I'm the oldest of all of them. I'm 10 years older than my oldest sibling, to give you an example. And so what stood out to me, what was the thing? So it's tough to pinpoint one thing because there was a combination of multiple things that happened. But I would say one of the pivotal moments is the birth of my oldest daughter, Lanasia. Because when she was, and it wasn't an overnight thing. It wasn't like she was born like, oh, I'm going to change. Nah, it wasn't that. Then there was another time she's here and I'm like, okay, I need to step up, right? But I'm still hustling and doing my thing, selling drugs. And then there was a time I caught a big charge back in 2003 and I was facing some time. And, I got bailed out, came home drunk. This is like a known story that I say when I speak. And I remember I was drunk, woke up. I used to drink crazy back then. And I was looking at my daughter. And I started to have like some visions, just visions about my life. And I just knew that if I continued on the path that I was on, that I would eventually be like my dad, an absentee father. By the way, my dad and I have a great relationship now. So we're good, but this is my life.
Right.
I would either be dead, locked up, and thankfully, because of knowledge of self, I had the awareness to know that ain't what it is. And although I was into negativity, I wanted to also break generational cycles and do some positive things. So I would say, Janice, the birth of my daughter, Lanasia, who actually wrote the back of my book.
Nice.
If you get my book, Janice, you go on the back. She's the one that wrote the piece in the back. So, but I would say that was probably the pivotal, because I say this all the time. I didn't really love myself like that. But, at that age, I didn't know I didn't love myself. If you ask me, I would tell you I love myself.
Right.
However, my love for her inspired and influenced me to say, I got to get it together, man.
Nice.
So,
okay.
Thank you for the question, Janice.
Okay. And I have another question that you talked about, and I'm glad you talked about hustle. It just seemed like we're connecting on everything I wrote down.
Beautiful.
Because I wanted you to describe when you talked about hustle in the book, and you said thinking on your feet, and you called it hard knocks.
Yeah.
What did that mean when you said thinking on your feet? Are you saying like at that time you had to try to figure out how to make ends meet, make money, so that made you go out there and hustle?
Yeah.
Like, so what did the hard knocks mean? Meaning that you knew you was getting to this point where you just needed to survive. Am I answering your question? I don't know.
Yeah.
Tell me about your hard knocks.
Some of the things that you mentioned are definitely aligned with what I would say.
Okay.
I would say in addition to that is learning how to navigate my environment. Where you have to be on point.
Yeah.
Like I remember, it's interesting, no longer living that lifestyle and living somewhere different and whatnot. Now, I see some of my mannerisms, right? And I'm like, wow, I'm still moving like, you know what I mean? Like, for example, when I'm walking, and I live in the suburbs now, when I'm walking down the street, I have this automatic, like, looking in the cars, who's in the cars, a car parked. And that's because that's the way I had to live.
Yeah.
Because, it could be a detective in the car.
Right.
Or it could be somebody plotting to get you.
Right.
Or somebody looking to see where you stash your drugs.
Yeah.
So then they can go steal it.
Right.
So, I just grew up, you just had to be on point.
So you carried that.
Yeah. And I still do it. And I don't think that those are bad things either. You know what I mean? And especially specifically for men.
Right.
Because I'm a traditional thinker in terms of I believe that men should be the protectors of their family. Not to say women can't. I'm a martial artist, so I train with women. Women fight, and they should know how to fight. So I think that there's layers to it. Right. So men are on the front line.
Right.
Then you have women. Then you have children and the elders in the nuclear. If you have a circle, you have the men surrounding the perimeter, the women in inner, and then you got the children and the elders in the middle.
Right.
So there's layers to it. So I just feel like, you should be on point. But a lot of those things come from School of Hard Knocks.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. To give you an example.
Okay. So we're going to talk about the story of identity.
Yeah.
Okay. So I read in there, what I liked about that was how you described special characters, and you described them by saying electric devices. What did you mean by that when you talked about different characters and just identifying yourself? Like, I see how you kind of broke it down, like how you broke it down when you spoke about, you went from here to a husband to, a father and this, that. But the way you broke it down was by like electric devices. So break it down to me as far as how do you break down as far as identifying yourself into different characters? What would you say that mean?
Yeah, so I don't remember the exact part where I mentioned electric devices, but I can tell you just from your question that what influences the way we think, the way we behave, talk, dress, is the personas, i.e. characters that we embody. So what I say is when you deal with character development, working on yourself, that's what I mean by different characters.
Yeah.
And also too, right? How was that saying? How does that saying go by Shakespeare? We are all actors and the world's a stage. Something to that effect. So when you want to reach out, when you want to understand a young man who's going through some things and why, a lot of parents say, man, I don't get it. I don't get it, right? Why? Well, you got to understand that he is embodying a certain character. And so if you want to get through to him, you got to speak the way that character will understand. And I'm not saying like people are fake or nothing like that. No, it's not that. This is a natural thing. Like right now you are in the character of the podcast interviewer.
Right.
And so you're conducting yourself a certain way. And you did the research and you're talking a certain way, right? We all do it. When I'm with my friends, I'm a certain character. When I'm with my children, I'm the father character, right? So it's just about really making sure that whatever character you choose is an empowered one, and I would, say a positive one.
And I like that because I feel like even when you spoke about character, you kind of talked around like just basically not these words, but basically just like tapping into yourself.
Indeed.
Just kind of tapping into the point where you kind of know how to handle things, before you kind of, get yourself involved into different things. Just basically just how you just broke it down of just how you kind of became a changed man, that you had to look back from your past to start from there to understand how to get to where you at now in your future.
There's a principle that comes from West Africa, Ghana to be exact. It's Sankofa. And Sankofa is represented by a bird facing forward, but the head is looking backwards. And so what that means is in order for us to move forward in the right way, we have to look back. And so, and this is a nice little piece to it too. The bird is holding the egg. So that egg represents life. It represents extracting the jewels from the past in order to move forward. So definitely, like, you got to be real with yourself. It's about saying like, okay, I gave an example, there was a time when I was an alcoholic. And so I really simple, realized that, man, a lot of the negative things that was happening to me, alcohol was associated with it. So let me see what happens when I take this part out, right? And so that's what I mean about going back in the past and again, not dwelling, but learning from it and moving on.
Yeah. And I like that because I do feel like, sometimes you do have to look back in order to connect to where you're going forward. I read this quote. This wasn't in your book, but I read this quote, and tell me how you feel about it. It spoke something about in order to understand peace, you have to experience violence. Now, I don't know if that works for everybody. I don't know, because I was trying to understand it, because I do feel like violence can mean a lot of things. It doesn't mean that you had to be out there fighting. It could be, to me, how I took it, that it could be just something disturbing your peace at the time, mentally, of some things that you've been through. Just reflecting on your back history of your life to know how to get to that place about peace, like how you just described, like you realized some things was happening, but when you took, something away, you realized the change. So when I read that quote, it just kind of made me say, like, right in a car, I was like, you know what? I want to ask True, how did he feel about that quote where it said, in order to, get your peace, you have to experience some violence. And I also took it that, some people who come from drug addiction, back in their days, some of the things that they experienced to to now where they're not doing drugs anymore, to where as though they are mentally grasping that peace, in certain ways. So when I did read that, it just kind of put me in a mind of some of the things of how you just described yourself in the book. So would you kind of say, maybe not the word violence, but do you feel like you've been through some things to where as though now you are gravitating to that peace?
Absolutely. I actually agree with that quote. I think it speaks to the yin yang of life. You know, the dichotomy and we live in a world of opposites. And I do think that in order to appreciate certain things,
Right.
you got to know the difference. And I know that from just my personal experience, but also being a parent and seeing my children, the older ones, like, man, why don't they get it? Or they seem to not appreciate certain things. Well, they don't know the difference. You know what I mean? If they came from where I came from, they would know what that means.
Yeah.
Right? And also understanding, and this is where my compassion and empathy come for them, life has to teach them. You know, I realize that, like, sometimes you got to allow the chaos, she's using the word violence.
Right.
Or sometimes even for them to land on the floor to say, this is what that means. This is what my mother meant. This is what my father meant. And then also, to answer with this last piece, I'm reminded of gratitude. The reason I appreciate certain things is because I know what the other side is like. And if you don't know, you might take it lightly. You may not even respect it.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate the relationship with my pops now because I didn't have them.
Yeah.
I can appreciate, my mom now.
Right.
And, so it's just so much, like, and I feel like even the basic fundamentals.
Yeah.
Like I think I might be a boring person these days because for me, fun is taking a walk through nature.
Yeah.
However, go in my past, party like crazy at a very young age. I'm bored. So sometimes, again, right, to bring it back to the youth, when I see them and they're partying this, that, and the third, I was like, okay, well, they didn't experience some of the things I experienced to even get bored.
Right.
You know what I mean? They think it's cool.
Right.
Wait till certain things happen.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I agree with that quote. Yeah, man. Peace is the absence of confusion. So to appreciate peace, you got to experience that confusion.
Yeah.
And when that confusion comes, you start crying for that peace, right? And then when that peace comes, you're like, we want to strive to keep it. Exact. Hold on. Like DJ King said, hold on to it. Keep it. Learn from the chaos. So, yeah.
And another thing that I would say in closing, that to me, you have to appreciate where you come from in order to be okay with where you at now in life. Because sometimes some people think that it was a bad thing, when at the time it could have been some bad experience. But when you have overcome and you are where you at today, or we are where we at today, it's like, you know what? It wasn't so bad at all to get to where we need to get to kind of grab some of the peace. Even understanding, like you said, with you and your dad that didn't have a relationship, but now y'all have the best relationships, because now you could look back like, yeah, that happened, but where we're at today, I appreciate that on today. And I think some people in the world, they hold on to a lot of things that was in the past, and they don't really enjoy what's going on in the future. Like I tell my mother all the time, because she has this thing that she feels like, I'm like, even though she don't know and she's going to know now, I appreciate my mother past, because even though I feel like it was, rocky, I appreciate where I'm at on today. The knowledge, even though some things I did have to go out there and learn on my own and experience on my own. But to look back, I wouldn't change none of that, even though I am still growing at this age that I am and learning, some of the things that people probably figure, she should have already knew, but I'm okay with standing in that, because I still feel like, a lot of things that people feel like she should have already know. The best thing I love is that I'm here now and I'm willing to learn it, even though I didn't know it. So it's always a great thing about, having a past and coming from a certain place in your life where you can appreciate it now. But I do want to ask you this last question, and I want you to tell the audience and our followers, this was in your last chapter about fill your life with fulfillment. And I read something that said, believing in our accomplishment or believe in accomplishing something. What do you mean by that? Believe in your accomplishment or believe in accomplishing something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a little wordplay in there too, right? Fill your life with fulfillment.
Right.
So I think that is just important for us to know that life, and again, this is just my perspective.
Okay.
Life for me is about living a purposeful life.
Right.
And living a life that fulfills you. And I always have to add this, as long as it's according to nature and doesn't hurt anybody.
Right.
Because somebody might say, well, smoking crack fulfills me. Right? But that's against the laws of nature because it's causing destruction.
Right.
So that's one aspect. The other thing is, too, I have made some choices in my life that weren't fulfilling. You know, whether it was people pleasing or out of fear or, you know, whatever the case is. I learned, like you said, right, from that quote, the peace and the violence, from making choices like that and feeling the pain and the sadness, times that I cry to this day because of some of my choices. I just want to spread that wisdom, you know, that I learned the hard way to live a fulfilled life. You only get one,
Right.
you know, and something that I tell the young men, you expect, like the ones in their 20s, you think your life is tough now, but I want you to know, young men in your 20s, this is the easiest you will ever have it. Listen to me. I'm not just talking. I'm a purposeful man with very strategic and purposeful with my words. Focus on success and living a fulfilled life. Now, obviously, you got to be grown and mature, right? So you got to make money. You got to handle business. Yes. But even with that, seek some type of fulfillment.
Wow. That was nice.
Thank you.
That was nice, True.
Appreciate
And also,
you.
I know your wife is gonna appreciate when she watched this.
Yeah.
How? Because I'm for a wifey. I got you. I was coming.
Yeah, she
I know you're gonna appreciate him
she always gets nervous.
being vulnerable and
Indeed.
and saying what he's saying, and you understand
Yeah.
that he's sorry and he's standing in it and he recognized it, and that's another way to love him more.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
True, before we go, I want to thank you for coming on the Shady Talk Wednesday podcast. But I want you to tell our viewers where they can purchase your book.
Yes. So the real simple and easiest way is just go on Amazon, True Kepra, TrueKhepra, and my book will come up, or The Power of Choice. If you look up The Power of Choice by itself, some other stuff might come up. The easiest way is probably just putting my name in. Also, you can go to B as in boy, S as in Sam, P as in Peter, books.com. That's the publishing company. You can order directly from that site. So, or you can find me on Instagram, TrueSpeaksPower. Drop me a DM, and I got you. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm glad it was fun for you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Shady Talk Wednesday. Be sure to tune in every second and Wednesday of the month. I always have a great topic, great guests here. Also, be looking out for my Oldies But Goodies comedy show coming up May 11 at Uncork Wine, Total in New Jersey. You can follow me on Tawana Warner on Facebook to get any of that information. But thank you to my YouTube followers, my Facebook followers. Thank you for Shady Keys being in the building with me, representing also Keys Tech Bites that has a senior citizen program that she teaches the seniors every Tuesday and Thursday in Paterson, New Jersey. It's a free program because we want all our grandmas to know the technology, because we know in this world, this is the world of technology we are living in. So once again,
can I give some DJ Keys some love?
Yes, give her.
DJ Keys, thank you so much for the love you've always shown me since day one. Nothing but love. You let it be known, and you support everything I do. So I just want you to know, I know I say thank you all the time, but I want you to know, if you look in my eyes, I am grateful for you. Thank you. I don't take that lightly. I appreciate you.
All right, y'all. So we're going to close this show up, but follow True Speaks Power and make sure you go and purchase his book. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss it. You want to read it. You want to give it to your sons, your brothers. This book is the truth. Thank you so much again. True Speaks Power for coming on Shady Talk Wednesday.
Thank you.
Hope to see you again.
Likewise. Oh, yeah. Got you. Yeah. It'd be dope. Take a picture.